Hi, good morning, Danielle. It is so good to see you.
Kelly, I'm so grateful to be here with you. I'm such a Kelly fan, so thank you for having me on.
Likewise. I have been a fangirl of yours since you were on the Jam. Um, I think when did you start that? 2017?
Yeah, you have a great memory. It was in 2017 and we were the youngest people. I had two co-hosts. We were the youngest people on morning TV.
Hmm.
And I don't know that everyone took us seriously. And I kept saying we should just lean into that. We should be like the cool kids of morning TV.
And you were.
Thank you.
Today I have Danielle Robay, who is somebody I've admired from a distance, and she's a good decade younger than I am. And I have just seen the trajectory of your career, and you are a girl after my own heart. You hustle hard, you don't take no for an answer. And the biggest announcement, I think, for you that I know in the media is that you are hosting Reese Witherspoon's new podcast, Bookmarked, which is in addition to your already successful independent podcast. So, can we start there and kind of go backwards? Does that work for you?
Absolutely. That's the most exciting part. So let's start there for sure.
Okay.
And I think you probably share this sentiment with me, but I think of no as next option. I never take no as it stands. Maybe it's a no for that person or that company, but I believe in the idea. I
Mhm.
think if there's a will, there's a way. And I have to credit my mother for that. Um, when I was very little, we would go to a park, and I grew up in Chicago, so
Mhm.
it was a small little park in the northern suburbs, and we would sit on the bench. And I was only like 5 or 6, so I didn't even understand what she was saying at this point.
Mhm.
We would sit on the bench, and she would look and say, "Danielle, you see all these people walking around and holding hands and drinking water and walking their dogs. They're living their lives, and you can spend your life on this bench watching them live theirs, or you can get up and go live yours. If you want something, go get it."
My gosh.
And my mom is a bulldog. Like, how they say vice presidents are always the bulldog? Like, my mom would be vice president. And I have a totally different personality than she does. But I have taken that and tried to run with it.
Well, I think you have. She planted a seed very early on.
She
And the,
did.
the line of work she's in, from what I remember, have read, selling mortgages?
Oh my God, I can't believe did such amazing research. Yes. My mom was an accountant and then sold mortgages. And so she was always like a people person.
Oh my gosh. And your dad a dentist. So neither one of them in this industry.
They thought I was nuts, Kelly. Like when I went to school in Madison, Wisconsin, and when I graduated, I did internships at the local stations in Madison, and I graduated and I said, "Okay, guys, I'm booking a one-way ticket to LA." And they said, "Okay, what are you going to do there?"
Mhm.
And I said, I'm going to be a TV host." And they said, "Well, I thought you wanted to do news." And I like, if you do news, you need to start at a small station in a small town in America. And I said, "I think the internet is going to be a thing. Like, I'm going to try and do it on the internet." And my dad, I still remember his face to this day, like because all he had known of the internet was like, that Britney Spears fan that was like, "Free Britney," that was like crying on the internet.
Oh
He
my
was like,
God.
"Danielle, Britney Spears fans are on the internet. What do you mean?" And I was like, "Give me 1 year of like your like support,
Okay. Uh-huh.
and not financially. Just give me 1 year of your support emotionally,
Uh-huh.
and let's see if I'm onto something or not." And they said, "Okay." And so I booked a one-way flight and lived in a garage and figured it out.
Girl, I love it. And, my husband's a Chicago actor. So we lived in Santa Monica for 7 years after we got married.
Wait,
And
you married an actor?
I did. He teaches acting at DePaul and he does a lot of the Chicago shows here. He's a theater actor, Steppenwolf Goodman.
Hmm.
So
So,
yeah.
okay, tell me, is he, because I think men that are actors are usually the most emotionally in tune. They are so beautiful with their words, like words of affirmation. You must get like poetry and
Oh
text
my
messages.
gosh, you're gonna me cry. He is the best thing that's ever happened to me in my life, and we met at my parents' bar in Lincoln Park.
Oh, I love that so much. So living in LA, we have so many actors here,
Yes.
and people will like roll their eyes and be like, oh, okay, you want to be an actor. And I
Mhm,
feel the exact opposite
mhm.
because every actor I have ever met is not only so intellectually curious and smart, they could have been anything they wanted. They could have been an attorney or a professor, anything,
Yep.
but they chose this uncertain path and dedicated their lives and gave up so much for their craft. So I have like insane respect for
I
people who do
should go
that.
have him come down and interview you because he needs to hear that. Because 'cause I'm like, it's feast or famine.
Yes.
We have 4 kids, and it's my point of bringing up LA is I know what it was like. There was an actor and a therapist on every corner, and we were both trying to break into developing our own businesses, and
Yeah.
it was wonderful, and the lifestyle's great, but we had 3 kids in a two-bedroom apartment, and we were like, "I think it's time to go back to Chicago." So now we're both still doing what we love and have been doing it for over
But
20 years, just in Chicago, and we travel to LA and New York, so
and also, I mean, I don't want to say bad things about LA. I love it here, but um I do think that raising children in Chicago is a really special place because
Mhm.
there is just a no nonsense like groundedness
Yeah,
that just doesn't exist in LA.
sure, which is why the immediate connection when you hear somebody's from Chicago or the Midwest. Midwest is best.
It's true. I think I can't believe we're quoting Kanye, but I think he said that. and I
No,
agree with
no,
him on
had it,
that
had
point.
it. Okay, so you move out to LA, you're living in a garage, and then, as social media would have it, it's like, and now she's a podcast host for Reese Witherspoon. Obviously, there's a lot in between that.
Yeah.
So, what happens first?
Um, so I started sending people cookies and bamboo plants because no one was responding to my emails.
Mhm. Mhm.
And I was really green. I was brand new. And so I get why they weren't responding. I didn't have much to offer them.
Mhm.
But once I sent them gifts, a lot of them, I'd say like 80% of them would email me and say, Danielle, thank you so much for the bamboo plant. Like, we don't have anything, but keep in touch.
Mhm.
And then we had an email chain. And
Mhm.
so every 2 months, I would email and say, like, hey, here's my updated reel. How's it going? And about 8 months in, somebody called me. I got a call from an unknown number on my cell phone and they said, our host is out sick. Is there any chance you're free? Can you be at the Paley Center at 7 p.m.? And it was 2 p.m. And I said, absolutely. So
Of
I
course
run
you did.
home,
Mhm.
put my makeup on, and I did my first red carpet. And I owe so much to Simon Cowell because he gave me an exclusive and I've never been able to properly thank him, but I
Mm.
don't want to bore you with the whole trajectory. So fast forward,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I worked at Clever TV, which was like a YouTube conglomerate, and learned the internet. And then worked at Entertainment Tonight and eventually moved back to Chicago where we connected on the Jam, which was WCIU in 2017. And then moved back to LA for a man, which
Oh my
that's
gosh, I
a whole
do wanna
other
tap into
story.
that. Well, at the end, but yes, uh-huh.
I'm not with that man anymore.
Yeah, 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 yeah,
Um,
uh-huh. I know, I know.
but yeah, and then I worked at NBC and IMDb, and eventually, when the pandemic hit, all my jobs went to nothing because the entertainment industry shut down. And Larry King was my mentor, and I heard his voice in my head. He would always say to me, "Kid, you need your own show." And I would be like, Larry, they're not really handing out shows the way they used to. And he was like, you need your own show. It's the only way to do it. And a lot of people don't know this, but Larry King started in radio, and some guy from CNN called him one day and said, hey, Larry, you want to do an interview show? And like the next week, he had moved, was on CNN. His name was in lights, and he had the biggest interview show in the world, aside from Oprah.
Uh-huh,
And so the media landscape was just totally different. And so I never really took what he said in that respect seriously.
mhm.
And when the pandemic hit, I thought, this is the time. Like, I can do my own show now. And so I put a deck together. I pitched it to a podcast network, launched what is now Question Everything. And from there, I think one of my favorite stories, to be honest, Kelly, is that I had always wanted to work at E my whole life. When I moved to LA, I had stars in my eyes,
Mhm.
and I had gone in for so many meetings, and they always with like 12 different parts of the company and 12 different executives, and it was always like, we love her, but we don't have anything. And I was like, they don't love me that much. And I had sort of given up. I thought maybe that's just not for me. And then Tammy Filler was the
Oh,
EP of Hoda and
yes.
Kathy
Love
Lee.
Tammy.
She's
Uh-huh.
an amazing woman. And
Yeah.
she was brought over to E.
Hmm.
And the reason that that matters is because I think she was the first executive there that came from sort of a more cerebral backstory. Like, she did the Today Show, and so she knew what infotainment was, like, and I think she appreciated that about me. And one day I got a call and they said, hey, do you want to do this show with E? And I was like, I almost choked. I said, like, an audition? And they were like, no, no, like, we want you to do the show. And I said, what are you talking about? And they said, well, we've auditioned 40 people and we don't think any of them are right for it. And Tammy wanted me to call you. She said she thinks you're right for it. And I said, well, do you want me to come in and audition? And they were like, no, it's your show. I was like, okay.
Like, are you gonna pay me? Oh
I
my
didn't
God.
even care. I didn't care. I
Totally.
was so excited. And the reason I love that story is I walked into her office day one and I thanked her and I started crying. And I think she was freaked out that I was crying. Like, why are you crying? And I was just like, you don't know what this means to me.
Mhm.
And I was like, why did you choose me? Like, how did this happen? And she paused and she said, Danielle, I love your podcast. And
My God.
that signaled to me, and this is like the lesson in the story, is
Yeah.
that you have to go out and create your own work as a creative, because
Mhm.
nobody, unless you're Channing Tatum and get plucked from like Hollywood Boulevard or Miami Boulevard, whatever it was, like, like
Uh-huh.
that plucked out of oblivion thing, which
Yeah.
happens so
Yeah.
infrequently.
Hmm.
People do not see you the way you see you. And so they saw me as this red carpet girl or entertainment news. And I knew that I had so much more inside of me, and they didn't see it. So I had to create it. And that meant a lot of financial, emotional time investment
Yeah.
for them to see it.
Hmm. Hmm.
So that was my long-winded answer, Kelly.
No, that was perfect because for somebody who loved the Jam, and it's like it was no longer, but I was like, who is this Spitfire girl? And then you left, and like, I don't think I was on any social media at that time.
Yeah.
And when I wrote a book, people were like, you have to get on social media. Like, and so it wasn't like today where you know what everybody's up to. It's like, oh, that girl was so cute. Where'd she go?
Yeah.
And so just kind of watching you pop up, and then this huge announcement where you are, what was that, just 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago
Yeah.
that
It was,
it was announced that you're hosting this new podcast?
well, you know what's so cool, Kelly, is I actually pitched this show also.
Of
So,
course you did.
but like creating your own work, right?
Yeah.
Like, authors have always been my rock stars, which is why I was so attracted to Hello Sunshine in the first
Hmm.
place years ago,
Hmm.
because Reese opened up an entirely new lane for authors, particularly female authors. Um, and you know what I love that she always says is that it's not just platforming great writers, but it's putting money in their pockets, because that's really how you change the strata too.
Yep.
And she does both of those things undeniably. And so I was just a fan. I read almost all of the Reese's book club picks. I
Hmm.
obviously loved Reese. I loved Hello Sunshine and everything they were putting out. And so during the pandemic, I put together a pitch. I think it was called Book Club. And I said, as a fan,
Uh-huh.
I love what you're doing. And there are no, like, on every month I get an announcement of the book club pick, but in between those announcements, I'm not getting any content, and I want content. Like,
Uh-huh.
I am
Yeah.
Reese's book. Like, I'm like the fan here. It can't just be me. The other women that follow must want content too. And so
Sure.
I put a pitch together for a digitally native show, and it didn't go anywhere. But 2 years later, they thought of me for The Bright Side, which is the first podcast that Hello Sunshine launched. And then eventually, when they decided to launch the Reese's Book Club podcast, um, they came. They're such a value-driven company and really full of integrity. And so, they could have gone out to somebody else, even
Mhm.
though like
Mhm.
the
Mhm.
seed of the idea was mine. I'm sure they had thought of it also, but they came to me, and I ran with it because this is the most excited I've ever been to work on a show. Nothing has felt more aligned.
You are perfect for it.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank
And
you.
when we reconnected too, once I finally found out where you were and what you were doing, you were doing her podcast daily with a
Yes.
co-host, right?
Yes.
And I
We were
remember
doing a
being like,
daily show.
"How? How are you doing this every day?"
I look back and I'm like, I don't know. Cause I have my podcast and then the card game that I sell and then freelance jobs that I do.
Mhm.
And I look back and I was like, I did not sleep for like a year and a half. It was, when you can do it in seasons. You can't
Yes,
live your life
sure,
that way.
sure.
But like, it's like having a kid, right? Like the first year, you're
Mhm.
not really a person, and then you come back to yourself. That was me.
And then you look back and you're like, "How? How did I
Yeah.
do that?"
Yeah.
Um, you have this, like, groundedness to you that feels very spiritually aligned to me
Thank
just
you.
through the
Wow.
computer, like, I wanna grab you and, I give you a hug. I'm
Same with
so cu
you.
Thank you. I'm so curious to know, do you have any kind of spiritual practice? Not religion, but just, like, you know, you don't let anything get in the way. I have this vision of you as a 5-year-old sitting on the park bench with your mom and just, like, that was the seed, and you grew a forest. And so, like, I have to believe that comes from something bigger than yourself.
I love this question so much. Thank you for asking me. Um, so I grew up in a Jewish household, and my mom's side of the family was Jewish and went to temple, and my dad's side of the family was full of academics and scientists who thought that religion divided people, didn't believe in it.
Mhm.
And so my household was actually kind of confusing religiously. Is that a
Okay.
word?
Yeah.
Religiously?
Yeah,
Yeah.
sure.
It was confusing.
Yeah.
Because like my dad's the type of person that like the TV will be on, and if someone's on CNN or an award show or gets a touchdown and they thank God, like my dad will roll his eyes or change the channel, like he can't take it. And so that's what I grew up in.
Mhm.
And when I moved to LA, I I didn't know what I believed, but I didn't really have a belief system.
Mhm.
I believed in self-determination. And then one of my first red carpets was somewhere, and I got lost. And I ran into this videographer, and he was also lost. It was hard to find. And he said hello to this man outside of a gym named Steve Carlston. And he was like silver hair, big muscles. He was holding a basketball and just super charismatic and kind. And the videographer is talking to him. And I started giving him a hard time because that's like the Chicago in me. I'm like, what are you, you're like 65. What are you doing holding a basketball? Like, I was like, what is up? And he was like, excuse you? Like, I can kick their ass on the courts. And I was like, okay, we'll see.
Uh-huh.
And we had a funny exchange. And I left, and the videographer said, "Do you know who that is?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "That's Steve. That's the GM of NBC." And I was like, "The general manager?" I almost choked. And I was like, "Why'd you let me make fun of him?" And he was like, I ran back to him. And before he got in his car, I said, "Hi, Steve. The videographer just told me that you work for NBC. Like, could I get your email? I'm new here. Like, can I come and meet you at your office?" And he was like laughing, and he was like, "Yeah, email me."
Uh-huh.
So I put a whole pitch together. NBC was the only place that didn't have an entertainment reporter. And so I put a pitch together, and I go to his office and I pitch him on why they need to have one and what the stats are and what his ratings are. By the way, like the general manager of a news station knows their ratings so well because that's what brings in money. Like, and
Mhm.
here is this 22-year-old idiot telling him what his ratings are. Looking back, I'm like so embarrassed, but he totally took me seriously and was so kind and gracious. And after hearing me out for 45 minutes, we sat and he said, listen, Danielle, I cannot give you a job. You're too green. This is the second largest market in the country,
Mhm.
but I am going to be your friend. And since then, Steve has been my friend, and we would talk on the phone. He would give me advice. And Steve was Mormon, and Steve
Uh-huh.
was so deeply connected to his faith, and um, connected in a way that resonated with me so well, because it wasn't about a specific God, it was about service and people. And
Mhm.
so he, if somebody needed help moving on a Sunday, Steve was there. And I'm like, why are you like, you have a huge job. Like, you could give someone money to move. And he
Sure.
was like, no, it's my duty to help. He would go move.
Oh,
And like, he would go to the gym and he would see somebody who didn't have basketball shoes and he would give them his. And I saw the way he lived. I'd never seen anybody live like that. I think I grew up around wonderful people, but I didn't see service like that. He lived it, and it was from his soul, you
mhm.
know?
Yeah.
And so I thought, that's what I want to be like.
Mm.
And I started thinking, what would Steve do? And I would be in line at the grocery store and I would be so annoyed with the cashier who couldn't do something right. And
Sure.
instead of getting frustrated, I would
Mhm.
think, how would Steve act? And Steve would smile and say, take your time. How can I help? And I started to try and embody that.
Mm.
And as I started practicing it, it became who it became who I was, who I
Mhm.
am.
Mhm.
And since then, I actually dated somebody who was Catholic,
Uh-huh.
who had a beautiful relationship with God, who also really helped me. And so my long-winded story, Kelly, is that um, people of so many different faiths have shared their relationship with God, with the universe, their connectedness with me. And
Mhm.
so I can sit here today at 34 years old telling you that I feel so deeply connected. And I don't know to what.
Doesn't matter. Something else.
I it's a weird thing.
Yeah.
In Farsi, there's a lot of Persian people in LA,
Yeah.
and my ex-boyfriend was Persian, and Farsi is such a beautiful romantic language. It's like poetry.
Mhm.
And in Farsi, God means the deepest part of you. And that is the definition that I've connected to the most, I think,
Mhm.
because I do feel like it's that whisper. Do you ever hear that?
Absolutely. I do.
It's probably why you wrote the book.
It is. I hear whispers all the time, or I call them God winks. That when we can just get quiet and look and hear and feel, and you're so teachable. I think that's such a gift. Like, you have all these people who have come in and out of your life who have left these little nuggets, and it's like you're in a cafeteria line and you're like, "Yep, I'll take that and I'll take that," and you've
Yes.
created your own. That's so
I love
beautiful.
that you said that, because Dave Chappelle had this funny clip that I saw the other day where he said, your 20s are for, like, as a comedian, your 20s are for looking around and copying everybody you think is doing it great.
Mhm.
And your 30s are for choosing the parts that feel right to you, keeping those and throwing everything else away. And then
Mhm.
your 40s are about like making what feels aligned with you really awesome.
Mm.
And I feel like I did that in my 20s. I was an observer. I picked up a lot of pieces. I still pick up things, but
Mhm.
I
Mhm.
do feel more rooted in myself now. And I
Mm.
try to just like share everything that I've learned. Do you feel that
And
way?
yes, it feels like a calling, or like, duty is such a bad word to me, I feel like, but like a calling. I think that's mostly aligned. A lot of the work that I do is a labor of love. And it's a blessing and a curse in some respects. Um, but I just feel like I want to spread that. And that was why I launched this podcast, because I'm like, there is so much negativity out there, and that's
Yeah.
all we're focusing on. And so can we, I mean, yes, it's important to be knowledgeable and be an advocate and be intelligent about what's going on in the world. But it's also important to put our blinders on and be like, what is right here? So hopefully, people can listen to this podcast and feel a little lighter or more hopeful, or have something tangible they can take away and be like, I'm going to try to look around and see what that brings me this week. And I think
Yeah.
that's so beautiful. Um, did you have something that you
I
wanted to
was
add?
going to say, I just hosted the World Happiness Conference.
I'm getting you on the heels of that, aren't I?
Oh
Are
no,
you just doing that
that
over the weekend? No, that was something else.
I did create and cultivate this weekend. Which is,
Mhm.
it was actually so fun. It was a women in business conference. If anybody out there wants to go next year, it was like one of the best events I've been to.
Mhm.
But I hosted the World Happiness Conference, and they opened with a psychologist named Dr. Dan Tomasulo. He's in New York, and his lecture was on hope. And he said that hope is the only positive emotion that requires a negative emotion first. And I really, that stuck with me because
Mhm.
we think that like optimism is so hard to come by, or hope feels impossible because of how we're feeling in the state of the world right now. But I think like if we know that hope requires the negativity, at least
Mhm.
for me, it feels mobilizing. Like I'm like, okay, hope is the next thing.
Right, right. And you have to feel the crappy stuff in order to
Yeah.
get there. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so you oh my gosh. I mean, Larry, you just threw out like Larry King was your mentor. What hold on, I wrote this down. He said something about you that's on your website. Um, you can probably oh, Danielle Robay has the ability to make people feel seen. As soon as I pressed the Zoom, it was like we saw each other. And
Yeah.
so,
But we have a thing.
okay.
I hope you
You don't
feel
have
it.
this with everybody? Kind
No.
of you do.
No, because I'm practiced in conversation, which you are too, like I'm sure you feel very similarly. You can find something to connect with somebody about or talk to somebody
Yeah,
about,
yeah.
but there is this intangible that you just have with some people, and we
Mhm.
have it, I
Okay,
think.
awesome.
Yeah.
So how did Larry King become your mentor? Who's saying these wonderful things about you?
He was such a great guy. He really was a great human being. But I was working at an entertainment outlet, working 16 hours a day, just really miserable. I was a political science major. And as I mentioned earlier, my dad's side of the family was all academics. So my dinner table was, what do you think about like at 7, my grandpa was like, what do you think about President Bush? Like, and I wanted to be able to keep up. And so our conversations were full. And I got to this entertainment outlet and I was writing stories about Bindi Irwin's bikini body. And I wanted to die. Like, I just was like, this is my in Yiddish, like head is kepi. And I
Uh-huh.
had my grandfather's voice in my head, and it kept saying, like, you're wasting your kepi. Like, what are you doing? And so I called my mom one day from a gas station, and I was like, I had broken out in like hives or cystic acne, and I was so exhausted. And I was like, I don't know how much longer I can do this. Like, I'm so tired, mom, and tired in a way that like I can't keep going.
Yeah.
And she said, quit. And I was like, what do you mean quit? Like, I have no money, I have no savings. I was living in a like little studio, so rent was my own. And
Mhm.
she was like, I don't want to put you in an anxiety ridden place, but you always figure it out. And if you got hit by a car tomorrow and your last day was spent at that office in Burbank with no windows, wouldn't you be so pissed? I was like, yes, I would. And you know what was crazy? Everybody that I was working with was miserable.
Mm.
They also hated the job, but they had been there for years and they stayed for years after me.
Mhm.
And I'm so grateful to my mom for giving me that sort of permission to follow the whisper,
Mhm.
because I don't think I would have followed it myself. I would have tried to power through. So I quit, and I was unemployed and obviously really anxious about money,
Mhm.
and thought, how do I make the best use of my time aside from applying for jobs? Because, like, Indeed.com doesn't really have looking for a TV host. And so, my options were very limited. And I said, I'm going to take myself to grad school. So I started watching hours of Robin Roberts, Larry King, Oprah, Barbara Walters, George
Mhm.
Stephanopoulos. And Kelly, I have notes still in this Google Doc to this day, like hundreds of pages of how they transitioned, what questions they asked, how did they use their hands. When they were asking a hard question, would they move their lips less? Like I was a
Wow.
psycho student. And I started writing down questions because everybody says they want to meet Oprah or Michael Jordan.
Yep.
And say you met them at a restaurant or a shoe store, what are you going to say? And I wanted to be prepared. And so I was like, I'm going to write down all these questions that I have for all of these people that I'm going to interview one day. And I wrote down a list of like 800 questions and I had them segmented into Michael B. Jordan, Oprah, Michael Jordan, like all these people. So
Okay.
as I'm doing this, a friend of mine said, I have a surprise for you. You seem really down and depressed, honestly.
Mhm. Mhm.
Meet me at Nate and Al's at 7 a.m. and wear makeup. And I was like, why would I wear makeup? You can see me. I'm like more of a natural girl unless I'm at work.
Yeah.
I was like, why would I wear makeup at 7 a.m.? That is so not me. And he was like, trust me, just you're going to want to. I said, okay. So I come in full hair and makeup at 7 a.m. to this deli in Beverly Hills. And I walk in, and Larry King is sitting there with like 6 childhood friends. And
Stop.
my friend said, you're going to have breakfast with Larry. And so I walk in and I sit down and I have breakfast with Larry. And I had, because I had written down questions that I'd watched so many of his interviews, you know? And so I had all these questions and I didn't get to any of them because he was so insatiably curious. Like he had this flip phone, he didn't have an iPhone.
Uh-huh.
And so he would flip it open and say, Danielle, what do you use these things for? Like, why are these kids so obsessed with phones? And why do you like the Kardashians? And like, he could talk about like smart things, but he wanted to talk a lot of nonsense too.
Mhm. Mhm.
And at the end of breakfast, because he would go from breakfast to his job every day, and
Wow.
he was like very regimented. And so at
Uh-huh.
the end of breakfast, we only had like, I would say 60 minutes together. And
Mhm.
I said, Larry, I didn't get to ask you anything. Can I come back tomorrow? And he was like, well, don't you have a job? And I was like, no. And he goes, well, you're welcome anytime. And so for about 8 months until I got my job in Chicago, I was having breakfast with Larry and his childhood friends. One of them was his speechwriter, Cal Fussman, who has an awesome podcast about questions
Okay.
and curiosity. It's like one of
Mhm.
my favorites. He's such a beautiful interviewer. He wrote a column in Esquire for years, so he's so talented. But it gave me like a home, kind of. You know, I always
Oh
say,
my
I
gosh.
told Reese this when I met her for the first time, and I told her that Hello Sunshine gave me a home in LA.
Mhm.
And I really meant it. But the first time I ever felt that homey feeling was at Larry's breakfast
Mhm.
table.
Mhm. Well, I'm sure, as I experienced, you have many homes in LA. Some feel better than others.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know actually, Kelly. Like for a long time, LA didn't feel like home to me. I
Mhm.
actually felt really lonely and um, I didn't feel like I was here for a reason, but I didn't feel like I fit into the culture here a lot.
Oh. Mhm.
And I finally feel at home, I'd say in the last 2 years.
Oh, and where exactly is home? Are you in the valley? Are you on the west side?
I'm like in LA proper. And so
Yeah.
I'm in the hustle bustle of it
Oh
all.
my gosh. And
Yeah.
the man that you came out to LA for after the jam
Oh my
is no
God.
longer.
He's no longer he was probably the worst guy I ever dated. But he was also probably my biggest blessing in some ways because um that started my journey of self questioning. It put me in therapy because when he broke up with me, and it was it hit such a deep childhood wound. It wasn't even, I realize now, it wasn't even sadness from the breakup. Like something about him,
Mhm.
actually I could tell you what it is. I've done enough therapy. What
Thank
it
you.
was I had never really opened up to anybody romantically. Like I'd always had I was always like 70% in.
Mhm.
And we finally, after like a year and a half, I was really in it with him. And he saw all sides of me.
Mhm.
And we lived together for a few months. And about 4 months into living together, he broke up with me. And so what I internalized it as was I finally let someone see the real me, and they didn't like it.
Sure.
And it hit such a deep wound. And so for 2 years, really, I was like not okay. I had to crawl out of that hole. And
Mhm.
what's so interesting is it made me such a better person and interviewer, because I had this well of like this depth of emotion and sadness that I hadn't been able to tap into before. So I
Mhm.
could see people better because I
Mhm.
could see myself better.
Sure. And that is so important for people who are listening to hear because I have 2 camps of people. They're either middle-aged like myself who've been married for 20 years and are like, "Am I in it for the long haul or am I thinking about getting divorced?" And then I
Wow.
have another camp of people who are mid-30s who are in and out of dating or experiencing extreme heartbreak and broken engagements and things like that, who are on the apps and feeling so discouraged. And is there any nugget of hope you can tap into there, or just even speak about your experience, strength, and hope from that lens of being vulnerable again in a relationship after you've been heartbroken that way?
For sure. I will caveat with I'm single and lightly dating.
Okay.
So I don't know that, like, I have a lot of respect for my girlfriends that like are really consistently putting themselves out there. I don't know that I am.
Hmm.
Because they do deal with more. They do deal with more disappointment and letdown and frustration because, dealing with people dating is like a master class in communication and disappointment
With
until it's
people
not.
who some with a lot of the population who don't know how to communicate.
Right.
Right.
Totally.
Hmm.
Um, I can tell you after that big bad breakup, um, I met a guy who lived in New York who was my best boyfriend ever. And we're not together now, but he is the reason that I started Question Everything, both the podcast and the card game. Um, he, I cry every time I talk about
Please
it
let
because
it go.
I I really feel so indebted to him. He My parents, even though they were super supportive, they came from a more my mom is first generation,
Hmm.
and parents just want you to be safe. And so even though they said go for your dreams, they were also like, well, do you want to be an executive recruiter? Or are you sure you don't want to go to law school? And
Yeah.
I didn't feel their full support.
Hmm.
And I definitely didn't believe in myself fully. I believed in hustling, and I believed in
Hmm.
putting one foot in front of the other, but I didn't have the vision. And I'll never forget this. I went on an audition for right before the pandemic hit, and they flew me to New York. And I thought, this is the moment I'm going to get this interview or this job. And I went for the audition, and that night my agent called me and said, you didn't get it. And I'd never been upset about a no before.
Hmm.
No meant next option, right? Like I never personalized it, but I fell on the bed and I was crying. And I had just met the New York guy probably like a month or two before that. And so I was still sort of heartbroken from my last relationship, and I didn't know him that well. And I'm a slow burn. I don't open up quickly. I don't trust quickly. Once you're my friend for life, but it takes a minute.
Uh-huh.
And he came into the hotel room, and I was so embarrassed that he saw me in that state because it was like too early, you know? And he sat on the bed with me and he said, you can cry and be upset for 24 hours. And then you're going to figure out how to create this on your own. And I was like, you don't get it. Like, I wish I could create something on my own, but in what I do, someone has to hire you.
Right.
The Today Show has to hire you,
Right.
or
Right.
he has to hire you.
Yes. Mhm.
And he goes, who says? And I was like, the world, the rules. Like, what do you mean? And he was like, think about the people at the Today Show, Danielle. Like, and I was like, okay, like, I love Craig Melvin. I think he's so talented and heartfelt. And
Yes.
he goes, to the Today Show could fire Craig tomorrow. And then what?
Mhm.
And I was like, yeah. And he
Yeah.
was like, so as much as you admire that guy, he's an employee. And I was like, okay.
Mhm.
And he was like, why don't you build something yourself and have these people be clawing to hire you, and you have something that you own? They're going to respect it. And I had never thought about that before. And he really gave me my wings. And I, it feels weird as this, like, I'm such a feminist, and so many people in my life, I call them angels, who have like given me jobs or picked me up from a hard moment.
Mhm.
They're women. Like, women have been angels in my life. And so it's hard for me to even like publicly admit it, that like this guy
Mhm.
is the one who I feel like gave me my wings, but he
Mhm.
did.
Do you still talk to him?
Yeah, we're still friends.
Okay.
Um, and to be fair, I think as most relationships go, like, you're connected or attracted to each other for opposite reasons.
Mhm.
Like, I think he helped me professionally, and I think I helped him personally. Like, I gave him a new vocabulary for communication and depth for relationship. Like, I totally
Yeah.
therapied him.
Speak therapy, I call it. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and what's funny is my girlfriends and I joke that like we've left a trail of feminists in our in our wake, because like every guy we date, we turn into a feminist. But he was the first guy I had dated who I didn't have to turn into one. Like, he had a single mom, and he was almost like, he saw her do everything. He saw her be mom and dad. And
Wow.
so I would look at him sometimes and be like, I can't carry that box. Like, you're gonna have to. And he was like, why?
Mhm.
And I was like, okay, I guess I could carry it. Like, he was chivalrous. I don't mean it that way, but
Yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he just was like, do it. And I'm truly forever grateful to that.
Oh my gosh. Well,
Yeah,
you aren't a rule follower, so I was surprised to hear you say that. It's
that's
not in the
true.
rules. You broke through every rule that was written just in terms of living your best life. And seemingly, and I want to follow that up with saying something that I love about your online presence is you are so humble and still vulnerable. Like after the first podcast that was released most recently for Bookmarked, you were like, yes, I was nervous. Like it was a big deal. And same thing I think you said before you got on stage this weekend for that you were hosting. You were like, yeah, I'm a little nervous. And I think that that just humanizes you. And people think that
Thanks.
everything we see on social media is like, oh my gosh, she's living her best life and amazing. Sure, some of that's true, but you also don't see the blood, sweat, and tears behind the scenes and all the no's and all the rejection. And how do you pick yourself back up and say, I'm doing this today? Have your 24 hours or a lot of 24 hours for some people,
Yeah.
and then what do you do with that? And you're doing it.
Thanks for seeing that in me. I've been on this journey with my mom, actually, because we went through a few years that were hard. I think I was hard on her,
Mhm.
and I was frustrated about things. And it was like when I first started therapy. And in the last 2 years, I'm realizing I'm actually a lot more like her than I thought.
Uh-huh, of course.
And one of the things that I'm recognizing amongst a lot of them is that my mom is such a sharer. And so I saw her, and I'm not actually as much of a sharer as she is. Like,
Mhm.
if my mom loves a book, she's texting all of her friends. She's gonna, like, she is like a one woman marketing machine. Like, if you need something out there, give it to my mother.
Uh-huh.
But she is a sharer in the sense that I saw her with her girlfriends, or even with me growing up. She would like come into my bed at night,
Mhm.
and before I was at like going to school, she would be like, I was so scared on my first day of high school, and I never felt like I fit in, and like
Mhm.
Like she would just tell me her honest stories. And so she didn't really have to give me advice because she just made everything feel normal. Every next step feel normal. And so I guess I never realized it until you just said it, but sharing feels like the thing to do because it's like that's how we help each other. And Gloria Steinem says it like the most feminist thing you can do is share your honest stories with other women.
Mhm. But yet it's so hard for some people.
Do you feel like you've gotten, well, you seem like a good sharer, but have you gotten more comfortable with it as you felt more sturdy in your career?
I've always been an oversharer because I struggled so much internally with
Mhm.
so many things I didn't share. So once I went into therapy for the first time at age 14, I was like, oh, this feels so good.
Wow.
Like there are no secrets. I can be who I am. I wasn't judged. I released shame. So I was like, I got to tell everybody about everything because I wanted to create like a tribe of people, and the only way I knew how to do that was through storytelling and sharing experiences.
Yeah.
And I think that's why I became a therapist. Not I think, I know, because I wanted, what does my husband say? Like if we go out, he calls me the silencer because I ask people questions that they're like, oh, I don't know if I want to answer.
I love, I want to go to dinner with you.
I'm like, why do we have to cut through any, like, let's just cut through the niceties and the small talk and like tell give me your Cliff Notes version in like 15 minutes.
Totally. I'm I'm with you. And like, listen, there's a time and a place for like, you know, do plants thrive or die in your care? I like that conversation too. I actually heard Trevor Noah talk about something that totally changed my mind on small talk because I was so anti small talk. And he said,
Uh-huh.
small talk actually brings us closer and big talk divides us. Big talk meaning religion, politics.
Yes.
Small talk meaning like, did you see did you see Love Island last night? And I was always anti small talk, but I
Yeah.
see what he's saying. I think there's a time and a place for both.
Wow. You have so many mentors and I think I read somewhere you want to be the millennial Barbara Walters.
Yeah, I
How's
do.
that going for you?
It's so funny. So I watched the Barbara Walters documentary that just,
Yes.
and I got to interview the director, Jackie Jesko, who is so brilliant. I think documentarians and therapists ask the best questions in the world.
Hmm.
And so I love talking to both types of people.
Uh-huh.
And she's really incisive and thoughtful. And interviewing her made me realize that I don't know there will ever be another Barbara Walters. I don't know
Mhm.
that the time or the media landscape allows for it, and I actually don't know that it would even be good for people to have one because
Mm.
media has been democratized. Like if you had a Barbara Walters interview back in the day, the reason people would go, even if she was asking really tough questions, was having a Barbara interview meant you were relevant. You were part of the zeitgeist. You
Oh,
were the moment.
mhm.
And there are no kings and queens anymore. Like
Mhm.
the media belongs to everybody, and I like that. Um,
Mhm. You don't think
so
it's overly saturated? I'm gonna go on a whole nother tangent. Here I said, "Can I have 20 minutes of your time? We're rolling into 1 hour. Love you."
maybe
I mean,
we're having fun. I'm having fun.
me too.
I do think it's overly saturated, but I do think that I sort of like independent journalism. It's a little dangerous because I do think like broadcast networks have a certain level of fact checking that independent people don't. It's always, some of them do. But I like when I worked for a news station, I felt so stifled.
Mhm.
All of my creative ideas were stifled. Um, I wanted to do something on Planned Parenthood, and I had to fight for 6 months to do a story on Planned Parenthood that had nothing to do with abortion.
Mm.
And
Mhm.
I just think some of the stories don't get told, and independent journalists are able to tell them. And so
Mhm.
I don't know. I kind of like it.
There are no rules.
There are no rules.
You can do whatever the fuck you want and nobody's going to fire you.
And what I'm realizing, which is wild, is like all these people that I looked up to that work at these networks,
Yeah.
like now that I'm like a little bit closer to them and we have mutual friends or I know some of them,
Mhm.
most of them are like trying to figure out what they could do on their own because they see the writing on the wall. And so,
Yeah.
like, yes,
Mhm.
they're making a better salary than me and they have more notoriety, some of them, but like they're kind of looking at me thinking, like, how do I carve a space, you know? And so
Mhm.
I'm like, huh, okay.
And a
Maybe
lot of
I
them are
can.
leaving networks and carving that space,
They are. I
and
mean, look
going
at
into
Hoda.
podcast. Hoda, that was exactly who I thought too. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, well, I went to the Shine Away event a couple years ago and was able to interview Brooke Baldwin, who I just love.
Yeah.
And um, I'll put all of the links in the show notes and everything, but I have to believe you're going to be at the Shine Away event by Hello Sunshine in October. Yes.
A thousand
So
percent.
we will meet in person then if I don't my brother lives in LA. He's a celebrity trainer.
I love
Um,
that.
so yeah, yeah. So I try to get out there as much as I can. I'm
That's so
never somebody to turn down a trip. That's why when I was like, can we do this in person? Are you going to be in Chicago anytime soon?
I love in person too. Let's we'll for sure meet at China Way, if not
Yeah.
earlier.
Okay. Love
Yeah.
you. Thank you so much for being here. What a great way to just set the tone for this podcast and for my week and, just changing the conversation. I so appreciate you.
I want to thank you, not just for your reverence, which I know you pay everybody, but you are such a generous, active listener. And
Mm.
I do a lot of podcasts and um, I'm open to whatever conversation people want to have, but um, it's really like I'm really grateful for the space that you're creating because I really feel like I got to share the real me, and that only happens because of the container you created. So thank you.
Thanks. It's like a therapy session, just recorded.
It
Kind
was.
of.
You're really good at it. You're too good. I feel like I'm gonna make a bet actually that 9 out of 10 people you interview are gonna cry.
Well, you're the first, so I will let you know. Thanks for de-virginizing the crowd.
Keep me posted. I'm a crier, so
Me too. Thank you.
thanks, Kelly.